Game begin.
Hello and welcome to Spy Colony episode 13. I am here with the Orcish Bowmaster, Michael J. Flores, and your
The
co-host,
Orcish Bowmaster.
your co-host, Lanny Huang, the Orcish Bow Apprentice. We're happy to bring you another exciting week of pre-modern talk. Before we get to the topic at hand, archery is super fun. I had so much fun last week. Highly suggest.
So I'm so happy we had that podcast, which has resulted in us shooting archery on Sunday. I had such a great magical weekend last week. So on Friday, I did F&M with my childhood BFF. Like literally, we've been attached at the hip since age 9 in Ohio. He was and ended up being one of my. He also got me into magic, kind of. Ended up being one of my college roommates who's a member of Team Discovery Channel, etc. So we did F&M, just play we played Modern Horizons Limited, but Mike Evans was there, and I ended up being like, you should play pre-modern, and you interacted with him on Twitter. I saw.
Yeah, Mike Evans was the sort of I met Mike Evans before meeting friend of the podcast, Itai Kurtzman. So Mike was part of the squad that we were doing home drafts with back in 2019, 2018.
Yeah, so he was just like, "Oh, can you send me a slide list?" so I recruited a potential pre-modern player at that F&M, and then I went out to dinner, and Jeff picked up the bill. Then you and I shot archery on Sunday, and then we called up David Tao because he lives right near the archery studio, and David picked up the brunch bill. So I'm free rolling the magical meals.
Whole weekend?
And yeah, it was awesome.
It's great because you were like, "What do you want to do? You want to do something this weekend?" And you were just like, "Do you want to pre-release and get food?" And I'm like, "I'd rather shoot archery and get food. I don't care about pre-release anymore.
You don't care about match. Yeah. I'm. So listen to this. Who moved back to Ireland last week? Who moved back to Ireland last week?
I believe that's Patrick O'Halloran Gannon.
Who flew back yesterday to pre-release Two-Headed Giant with me tomorrow? Why did he go back to Ireland? He literally flew right back.
I don't know. Maybe he needed to move into his dorm in a 3-day window or something.
Yeah,
weird
I don't
like
know.
That.
He'll probably explain it to me, but I'll be like, focus on the game, Pog. Because we're Two-Headed Gianting. Yeah. That's going to be prison rules, as you know.
Yeah.
Pre-releases are you hold yourself up by the teeth at a pre-release. That's a deadly, deadly tournament.
Yeah. No holds barred. And then what happened on Tuesday?
Oh, well, okay. So this is the story. You said to me, "Hey, do you want to just play test at the meetup? In between rounds or whatever." So I made a deck, and it took me. It takes a while to dig through your collection and put together. Carefully curate the different mismatched Siege Gang commanders you might play, for example. Spent an hour or two making this Goblins deck, which is 74 out of 75 Jared Doucette's deck. I did play a Red Elemental Blast because I have a weird printing of one. And so instead of a Pyroblast. So I made this deck, and I was just I might as well just play it if I spent all this time making it, and we can play test anyway. So I played it in the meetup, and I guess now I'm a Goblins guy. A bunch of people messaged me separately after I posted my deck list, and they're like, "So glad you've joined the Goblins clan. You finally understand the power of Gobbos." And they're like, "Oh, very straightforward list. I would have thought you would have tried to do something weird." These are all the messages I'm getting, right? From, in some cases, pretty notable pre-modern players. I'm like, yeah, I'm a Gobbos guy now. In some cases, I'm like, this is Jared Doucette's list.
Yeah.
So mission accomplished in 2 ways.
We joined the Siege Gang.
We got some testing done, and I did okay. To the point that I really wanted to use that meetup as testing for the 1.5K, but maybe I did because I might be a Gobbos guy now. This deck is live.
I mean, we got some important data from that for both myself and friend of the podcast, Thomas Corrado Matelski, because you faced none other than Replenish in round 3 and the Rock in round 4.
I did. Both of those things happened. So what we were doing was, in part, so we're going to release this not in a way that it can affect the matches that are going to happen on Monday, right? So Monday night, I will be commentating on one of the PSS top 4 matches. I thought they'd give me both, but they only gave me one. But there's 2 matches. We think there's going to be goblins maybe in both matches, maybe not. But for the meetup, let me understand this. You were in the camp that thought that Replenish was favored against goblins, or no?
Before we dove straight into testing, I thought that Replenish was favored against goblins overall. Not by a lot, but I definitely thought it was favored.
So as a Replenish player, I played Replenish a lot last year. I played it at LobsterCon, etc. I would have said that Goblins is the absolute worst matchup. I don't understand players like Rich Shea who think that Goblins is unfavored against Replenish. Goblins has literally every tool that is poison for Replenish. This is not to say that Replenish can't win. I just think it's literally its worst matchup. So, Goblins has a good clock. Other decks have a good clock, but it combines a good clock with multiple points of disruption. And it's not that any one of those points of disruption is necessarily lethal, though some could be. It's just that they kill you in like a turn or 2, which is different from the Rock, right? So the Rock has very similar disruption to Goblins, but their best draw gives you 7 turns to come back. So you often will come back. Like I watch you play these matches, we're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to draw deep analysis. What are you going to do about it? You cast both sides of the deep analysis, take 3. The Rock on full offense does another 3 over the course of that turn cycle, and then you combo them, right? Like it's really telling because they have even better disruption than Goblins. But on the other hand, there's decks like Mono Red that sometimes win against Replenish, especially on the play if they get like a pup draw, etc. They can be disruptive, but Goblins has this really powerful sweet spot, which is really good clock, really, I would just say appropriate disruption, right? So nobody's like writing Richard Garfield, right? Or like writing Martin Berlin and being like, you got to ban Naturalize. It's too good, right? Like, well, one Naturalize well placed in their Replenish matchup is basically the game. And Jared Doucette's list in particular plays Wasteland. I don't think that Wasteland is the consensus right colorless land to play in Goblins. You could play Wasteland, you could play Rishon Port, you could play Ancient Tomb. But damn, is it good against Replenish? That's a good combo.
Yeah, I think an interesting thing to note is that Wasteland being good against Replenish, Wasteland's good against Replenish for a multitude of reasons. The first, in contrast with Port, is that Replenish is actually very resilient to having its lands tapped down, thanks to Frantic Search. You can just flip the mana in your upkeep, cast Frantic Search. But 2, having something like an Ancient Tomb removed, it's not like, it really is like a double strip mine. It feels like a 2-for-1 because Replenish is so dependent on that mana from that Ancient Tomb that
because your stuff is all 4, right?
Exactly.
Like, you get like Stone Rain not from 4 to 3, but from 4 to 2.
Exactly.
And that's really powerful. The other thing that I thought was relevant was that whatever deck Jared Doucette plays on Tuesday night at 9 p.m. on the Cloud Goat Ranger, he is going to have on the play advantage, right? So one of the things that I like best about pre-modern is that whoever has played isn't at nearly as much of an advantage as in contemporary Magic, right? Like you can, winning a bunch of coin flips that's how you win RCQs. I know from experience that's how you win RCQs, right? Like I look back at all the store tournaments I've won and RCQs, PPTQs, whatever premieres they used to be called. I mean, a lot of the time I just literally won 4 rolls and then I'd play in the top 8 or something, right? It doesn't matter that much in pre-modern. unless you're goblins. If you're goblins, that ability to play first turn goblin lackey, especially if the opponent doesn't have a Swords to Plowshares, it could be game right there. If you think about it from the opposite side, going first isn't that great for the rock. It's just fine. But if the rock goes first, they can deploy a Wall of Blossoms, or in some builds, a Wall of Roots, before the opponent can attack with a Goblin Lackey for the first time. And that's literally the game, right? Like, you just didn't lose immediately, because if you get hit by that Goblin Lackey on turn 2, bad stuff can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that final angle of the naturalize was pretty potent, because some percentage of the time, my ability to stay in the game was just entirely based on resolving and protecting a Parallax Wave.
Yeah,
and so I could play a like even against a Lackey draw, if I play a Parallax Wave on turn 3, I can actually survive to hopefully pair that with an Opalescence. So the fact that you can then naturalize the wave, or if I present the wave in the Opalescence first, you can naturalize the Opalescence. The fact that you can do those things puts me in a very difficult position. And I'm comfortable leaking this now, because this will be after I don't play Replenish against Jared. And Tom has played a lot of against me with various decks versus Replenish. It's in the testing gauntlet. The card economy of Replenish is extremely tight. When you win with absolutely no resource to spare. So every single time you get wastelanded or naturalized or anything, you've spent so much of your time like looting and crafting and intuition.
That's just because of how you made your deck to be fast. Like, when I played it, I made my deck to last, right? Like, I played cards like Thawing Glaciers and Abeyance and Factor Fiction. You played cards like Mox Diamond.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I would say that in game ones. Like, once you have access to deep analysis, then you can play a grindy game. You can play an enormously grindy game. You can draw 10 cards. But
the thing that's weird about Replenish is that if it gets even 2/3 of its combo going, it's infinite on at least one axis.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's the thing. You're just like, well, you're out of resources. You're kind of out of resources, but you have infinite toughness, for example.
Yeah, right? you
have an infinite mana engine, right? Like, that's the.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's always been that's the reason why we play Parallax Replenish rather than Pandemonium Replenish, is just simply that any combination of 2 Parallax enchantments, or 2 of your enchantments in play, is a pretty good spot to be. If you have Tide Wave, your opponent has no permanence, you can hopefully find some time to get the rest of your stuff together. If you have Tide Opalescence, your opponent has no lands, you got a 4/4 that can hold down the fort. And then, of course, if you have Opalescence and Wave, you have an unkillable 4/4 with Vigilance, and your opponent has no creatures. So
obviously, the only interesting match to talk about from Tuesday, for the purposes of our podcast today, is the round 3 match that I had against L. Huang Barton, L standing for Legolas over here. So Legolas sits down across from me, asks if we want to play for 20, and we dissemble a little bit. I win the roll, and he rescinds the let's play for 20 before it's agreed to. So you're on the draw in game 1. I don't have a Goblin Lackey to open up game 1. My reminiscence of this is really fun. It's around turn 5 or maybe turn 4 if you had a Soul Land. I don't remember. You have an Opalescence in play. You cast a Parallax Wave. Just start moving things around and waving your hand. Like, you're like, wave out all your guys permanently, like, untap this, and you're just doing all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that hasn't resolved yet. And I'm like, naturalize your Opalescence. You're like, okay, game 2. So, and then in game 2, did you mulligan in game 2? I think you did. Right?
I don't really recall. I mean, in game 2, I probably like Multi-6, had to keep a hand that didn't have plow.
You kept a hand without plow, and I killed you on the third turn.
Game 1, what actually happened was you kind of had some goblins in play, and we were battling. And on a crucial turn, I just didn't run out a Mox Diamond to hold Swords of Plowshares up, so I could plow a War Chief.
Oh, because you wanted to play by prison rules.
Yeah. So I started
like in a pre-release.
Yeah, exactly, like a 2-headed giant pre-release. I was like, let's play tight. I got to play tight against Jared. Jared already gave me like a monumental take back in the Swiss. I don't want to ask him for that. So I was like, let's play tight. And then I like passed the turn, and then I was like, oh god damn it. I was like, wait, I meant to play this Mox. I like look at my hand. There's a Mox. There's a land. There's a Swords to Plowshares.
So you wouldn't have necessarily been blown out by the Naturalize.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like what that had happened like a turn prior, and then I was just playing towards like a replenish or something at a later point. But yeah, you just overwhelmed me, and you killed me over 2 turns. You had a War Chief turn, untapped, played another War Chief, played some pile drivers. I just like couldn't time the Swords of Plowshares, and the Goblins deck is so interesting. It can deal 4 damage a turn, or it can deal 20 damage over 2 turns. So, and both of those things can happen, with the same hand, depending on the situation. We then ran it a few times. Our testing results were pretty interesting because we played a lot of game 1s where I was able to sneak out a win. I was winning approximately half of game 1s. We were mostly like, well, I guess,
but maybe that's because I'm loose, right?
Yeah, you're just keeping any hands.
Yeah, so you would tend to not win the games that I drew Goblin Lackey. Yeah. Right. So I think we played like our first 7 games. I hadn't played a Goblin Lackey.
Yeah, it was a lot of games. I mean, initially my analysis was, I'm like, okay, I don't dislike my game 1 range because I feel like if we both have average hands, then my average hands beats your average hand. If you have Goblin Lackey, you win. But if you have Goblin Lackey and I have Plow, then we're back in the first situation, which is like, well, okay, now we're both decks that are 6 cards with average hands.
Do you like the play pattern of first turn Skirk Prospector, second turn Goblin War Chief? That was a big deal in Standard when Goblins, this version of Goblins was legal in Standard. I don't see people doing that a lot in Pre-Modern.
I personally don't feel like the juice is worth a squeeze unless your immediate follow-up on turn 3 is a lot of pile drivers.
Yeah, so the
pile driver.
The reason that play pattern is so good is if you have multiple pile drivers, you just kill them on the 3rd turn.
Yeah.
Right. So, this is how I sideboarded against you. I took out 3 Gem Palm Incinerators, 2 Mog Fanatics, and a Goblin Sharpshooter. Right, which is quite a few goblins. Right, I took out 6 goblins, but I sided in 2 Hull Breach, 2 Naturalize, and 2 Tranquil Domain. Notably, I did not side in Tormod Script. Let us discuss.
So my opinion is twofold. One, for the purpose of like trying to solve the matchup, I think that not siding in Tormod's Crypt is taking a very big shot that you're going to not like you're basically saying I will lose to Gear 1 out of Replenish. Did you bring in any copies of the Blue Blasts?
Red Blasts?
Yeah, Red Blasts.
According to my notes, I did not. Right. Yeah. So, but I would have. I would have. I super just. Yeah, I did not.
Yeah. So
I took a picture of what I sideboarded, so it must have been true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. In any case, I think that I ended up testing this with Tom a lot. And Tom arrived at sort of a full like half measure sideboard where he brought in 2 of the 3 crypts, 2 Pyroblasts, 2 Tranquil Domain. He left the whole breaches at home. He also took out the Incinerators. I of course was going to pivot to my Angel plan. And then he took out, Tinker or whatever nonsense. Took out 1 Ringleader. And so
but you have Mox Diamond.
Yeah, but I think that the idea of the Tinkerer interacting with Mox Diamond in a way that would matter would either involve playing it on turn 2 and tapping it on turn 3, which is not particularly fast. That's like, a 2-turn Stone Rain, attempt, or using Goblin Matron to get it when you could use Goblin Matron to just win the game.
So my thought process in leaving Tinkerer in is A, it can have haste in the mid game, but B, a big part of my calculus is I'm taking a lot of goblins out of my deck. There's like a finite number of goblins that you can take out of your deck before your ringleaders stop having very much text. That's one thing. And then secondly, I think a big part of my game plan is restricting your mana, right? Like, isn't that the whole point with like winning a mana war with Lackey versus Wasteland? against your forecasting cost stuff.
It's different when we're in post sideboard, and I can choose to, like, one of the things that I do with my Mox Diamond decks is that I only deploy Mox Diamonds when I intend to use them, right? So in the scenario where I go Ancient Tomb turn 1, Island Mox Diamond, Parallax High turn 2, like, I'm gonna cash in that Mox Diamond right away. Or you like I'll just miss a land drop. I'll just hold land Mox Diamond in my hand because I know if I draw a land, then I'll use that Mox the next turn, and just not expose my Mox to removal if I can help it. So, I think that your Tinker strategy puts us in a game that's much slower. And in a game that's much slower, I can just play the land and loot the Mox away. If it feels like, if it feels like you're going to give me time to do that. So Mox to me,
it's possible I didn't sideboard optimally. And the thing that is maybe bad is, are we going to be of the assumption that if Jared Doucette is bringing his Goblin deck, which we think he is going to do, that he would bring in Tormod's Crypt, and I didn't, so that's bad testing.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad testing, but you did it. We were playing game ones for the majority of the day, and then it wasn't until we were paired in the actual meetup that you sideboarded with the deck, and you were sideboarding to win the meetup, not sideboarding to help me test the matchup versus Jared. So,
well, I think winning the meetup does help you test the matchup against Jared because it taught you an important lesson, which is that Replenish is not, in fact, favored at all against Goblins.
I took an opportunity to reach out to Peter Smits, who I of course played against in the top 8 of Lobstercon. He made the top 8 with Goblins, and he shared on Will's podcast that he also really didn't like the Goblins matchup, the Replenish matchup for Goblins, because if Replenish is in gear 1. If Replenish is executing on the Replenish plan, Goblins is not particularly good against that. But of course, the Replenish plan is pretty hard to execute if you have your mana disrupted, and if you time a few blue blasts, or maybe you draw your Tormod's Crypt, or you have pressure.
Yeah, my thought process is I'll lose all the games that you win the lottery.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't. But maybe not all of them, right? Like, you could win some of the lottery and you still get blown up by a Tranquil Dome, right? That happens. So I'll tell you a thing. I had a conversation this morning with Binary Soloist, who I've become buddies with over Twitter, and he's joining the pre-modern community, played in some monthly cam stuff, and he never played Paper Magic before we started being buddies on Twitter. And he's burn guy, similar to me, and he described a situation. He says, because we were talking about, I'm a huge Eidolon of the Great Revel fan in Modern, and all the idiots have cut it for Skullcrack, which is an unplayable card. It's literally an unplayable card, and they're cutting a very good card for it. And he says to me, well, we're talking about this in context of, I think, historic. And he says, if I play an Eidolon and my opponent fatal pushes it, then it was just Viashino Pyromancer. That's what he said. And I said, well, that's great. But you're wrong. It's not just Viashino Pyromancer, which is like a 2-mana, 2-power creature that deals 2 damage to your opponent. It was Viashino Pyromancer plus Duress, right? That's really good, And he's just like, well, people think that's a bad result. And I'm like, that's why they don't win. Yeah. That's a great result, right? Like, I don't understand. Like, how is this your mindset?
Yeah, we're going to have to revisit the philosophy of fire for the binary soloists of the world.
Play a card, you discard your relevant removal card and take 2 damage? Like, I won the lottery on that exchange, right? Like, how greedy do you have to be to not like making your opponent discard their relevant removal card and take 2 damage? So anyway, and it's just like you stole a mana back at the same time. It's not like just this 2 mana, this sort of thing. But I don't know, maybe I'm not keyed into the Goblins, right? I feel like if Smiths also feels this way, I don't. Like, I know from the Replenish side that everything can go right for Replenish outside of outright winning the game, right? Like, because the thing about Replenish is you get close to winning the game a bunch of different ways, but you still have to go through the motions for a few turns. It's really common for you to have like a Parallax Wave and an Opalescence, and you pretty much can't lose to creatures now, but you could still lose, right? Like, your opponents, they're basically on a 4 or 5 turn clock when that happens. So you have to, they can't block, right? So blocking's not going to be a problem, but they're on a 4 or 5 turn clock, but they might still burn you out. Like, in order for you to have gotten to that point, stuff had to happen, and that often involved tapping an Ancient Tomb or a bunch of Addercar wastes. You could lose the game, right?
Yeah,
so,
I mean, well, let's talk about what people don't seem to understand about Replenish, which is that Replenish is a combo deck that can be very explosive, but its key, like its core competency as a combo deck is that it has inevitability where really no other combo deck like has inevitability, right? So like if you take a long game between Replenish and any black mid-range deck, any non-blue mid-range deck, and like a good portion of control decks, like control at least is a little bit closer, but like post sideboard, or just like with the threat of playing, infinite Parallax Tides to pressure the control deck, the Replenish, uniquely does not get worse as your opponent, like draws out the game. And so I think that what's happening with these Goblins players is that their perception is just like, well, what am I supposed to do if they cast Replenish? Like, what am I supposed to do if they cast Frantic Search Replenish?
Yeah, but like,
which is like
their Replenish might not even be that good.
Exactly, but
right? Like, it's just like a sweet 2-for-1.
But that's their thought. It's just that like I think they can kind of see, like, they look at the deck list and they're just kind of like, they forget that in order for you to lace together a successful Replenish, you need a lot of things to happen. You need either an intuition related line to get stuff into your hands.
It's not just 4 that you still need like a careful study to complete the line.
Well, no, I mean, okay, so I'll just explain this in stark terms, right? So if you have nothing except for lands, intuition, and Replenish, you can intuition, hopefully a soul land, right? You can intuition on turn 2 and Replenish on turn 3. And if you intuition for one of each enchantment, your opponent has to choose between 3 realities. One is Opalescence Wave, one is Opalescence Tide, and one is Tide Wave. Goblins against any of these is their best bet is to give you Opalescence Wave, and hopefully they have a board, Opalescence Tide, and hopefully they have a board to attack through the tide, because your next turn you're going to complete the combo and lock out the game. So that's a very potent line.
Yeah, so Opalescence Tide is great because protection from blue.
Right. I mean, it's great for if the Goblins.
I mean,
has
great is relative, right?
Yeah,
You're probably gonna lose.
So
it's kind of great.
So, anyways, so that's like a 2-card combo. It requires 7 mana to get off, right? 3 mana plus 4, and a Wasteland is going to put that combo back a lot of turns. So,
Lanny, when you say this reality, just let's talk about the mechanics of this. You, this dastardly combo player, a terrible person, cast the card Intuition, and you obtain the cards Parallax Wave, Parallax Tide, and Opalescence, right? So Opalescence will theoretically turn your other any enchantments, right, whether or not you own them, into creatures. They would be 4/4 creatures in this case. And then a blue enchantment that messes up land and a white enchantment that messes up creatures. Are you saying if I give you the white enchantment that messes up creatures, the Parallax Wave, against Goblins, you wouldn't just play the wave and take 4 counters off of it and then untap and cast the Replenish? Because that seems much better to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on what the battlefield is on turn. Like if I'm on the draw, so you've completed your turn 3. I mean, this is why I'm in a bad situation to start with. Is like if you've completed your turn 3, you're going to untap and play your turn 4. Then on my turn 3, I absolutely have to cast Parallax Wave because most of the time I'll be facing down.
I think the optimal split there is to give you the Opalescence because I think the natural play is for you to Replenish, which will give you. I mean, these are bad situations for a Goblins. Like none of them. This is the best.
I'm the only reason I'm explaining this is because this is the best case scenario. This is where you have 4 total mana
on turn 3.
On turn 3, correct, and you have exactly Intuition and Replenish. So the rest of the lines are basically blends of Careful Study, Attunement, some number of enchantments. So like when you don't have the intuition to tie everything together, you're stuck looking for things the old-fashioned way, and your deck can deliver you any number of these enchantments in any number of orders in ways that you have to work around. This is actually like
some of them are not very attractive.
Yeah, some of them are very
under pressure,
very strange. And this is actually the core difficulty of playing the Replenish deck, which is you have to play the range of your top decks. You have to be like, okay, am I looting this away to set up for a later Replenish, or do I need to actually start putting this together to start hard casting spells.
So
but basically,
can I interrupt you about Replenish for a second, just game plan wise?
Yeah, sure.
I think that where Replenish excels and why it's an attractive combo deck to me versus a deck like Full English Breakfast, which is faster, or like Hermit Knot, which is faster, is that it has this outstanding second gear, especially against control, where you can just start laying out 3 and 4 casting cost enchantments, and your opponent really has to be like, I'm going to let this opalescence resolve, and if I do, what happens? You start getting attacked by Seal of Cleansings, and the reality just changes. So they start countering these things, and they become increasingly vulnerable to Replenish. It sounds to me like maybe I sideboarded wrong based on just what we said, because if Replenish is getting most of its equity out of a combination of winning the lottery and Gear 1, which is what, I'm going to play as a combo deck, maybe I should be trying to circumvent Gear 1.
I agree. Right? I think it's within reason. So you weren't bringing in Tormod's Crypts because you wanted to have some amount of pressure in your deck. And so basically you just have to balance. I think a balance of Tormod's Crypt, Blue Blast, and Naturalize effects essentially covers all your bases. All of those are sort of half effective during various parts. Like Red Blast can slice out an intuition that the Replenish player absolutely needs to win.
But it can't stop you from just like hard casting your white enchantments.
Exactly, but if you're going to hard cast your white enchantments, then you can use your Naturalizes to shore up that line.
That's what I wanted to stop. I feel like your deck can basically only win if the card Opalescence is in play, right? So
luckily I have Exalted Angel, but that's
so I think Exalted Angel is actively medium against goblins.
Yeah, it's very good. I don't want to what I want to emphasize is that this is a really awesome matchup. Goblins is definitely favored, but in my testing, I went ahead and I tested 4 additional matches with Tom, and in each match, pre-board and post-board, we played every kind of game. We played Goblins as a control. We played Goblins as a beatdown. We played Replenish as a control. Replenish as a beatdown. We played Exalted Angel attacking for the win. We played Exalted Angel just to block Goblin Lackey. So literally, he played Goblin Lackey turn 1. I'm like, okay, Exalted Angel turn 2. It's just there to block. I flipped it the next turn. I didn't even attack with it. It just was there to block for 3 or 4 turns until I could lace together a Replenish hand.
So last night on the team chat, you and Tom played a match, and that was the finals of some tournament. I didn't realize this. Well, I thought you guys were just testing or something. And so Tom was on the play with Goblins, right?
Yeah, he annihilated me.
You were Replenish, and he browned you.
Yeah, I mulliganed quite a bit, and I just I had no kind of hand basically. And Replenish is a deck that doesn't mulligan very well if it's playing against the potential of Wasteland basically. And in our testing, what I also found out, which Tom didn't know, is that if Tom would do this thing where he would hang on to his Wastelands, he's like, oh, I need 3 or 4 mana so that I can play Goblin Ringleader. Or he'd hang on to his Naturalizes. I need to use this Naturalize so that I can, catch an Opalescence later. If he saw my hand, he could just waste immediately, naturalize every Mox on site, and then I just could never win.
Game 1, he sacrificed his Goblins to Skirk Prospector, so he naturalized your Mox at the end of turn. I thought it was just very aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, that was when it was deterministic that I'd lose. Yeah. I'd lose without the Mox, but when it's non-deterministic, the mana disruption is very good because again, Replenish is really tight on resources. But the thing that I want to point out is that every kind of game could be played against these 2 decks, and because of that, Goblin sort of needs a blend of tools to work with. You can't just be Tormod's. If you draw all Tormod's Crypt, right? Like Mike is saying,
you lose to the hard cast.
You'll lose to the hard cast, and then you can't be all Red Blast because same thing. But you also can't be all naturalized
setups, right? They don't stop the thing that I think I had in my head was that they're mana efficient because if you trade a Red Blast for a Intuition, that's pretty good. If you trade a Red Blast for a Frantic Search, it's not very good.
It's still good. Actually, both plays steal 3 mana from their Replenish player.
Yeah. So, but I was thinking they just stopped setups versus Tranquil Domain stops you even if you've already gotten there, and that's kind of what I was. All right, I want to beat him even if he gets there.
So Tranquil Domain operates in this case like a deflecting palm, because if I play towards...
Oh, really? If you said that to me, I would not have played it.
Exactly. So if I play towards if I play towards a double Opalescence, or actually, if I play towards full combo, right? Say you pass the turn, and for whatever reason, you had to tap that Carplusan Forest because you needed to play a 4 or 5 casting cost goblins, right? I have 4 plows post board, so I took care of the lackey plan. You've been wastelanding me. You're tight on mana. So you have a choice. Hold up Tranquil Domain against my open mana, or play...
This sounds even more like a Skullcrack.
Yeah, or a Skullcrack. Yeah, Skullcrack or Deflecting Palm, right? So you're like, well, I need this Goblin Ringleader, but I also need to hold up this Tranquil Domain for the rest of the game.
This is blowing my mind.
Because at any
I don't know anymore.
Yeah, because at any point in time, right, on your end step, I can just cast Intuition. I can get my Rainbow of Enchantments.
The
I can loot them.
mathematical equivalent of dividing by 0, but I can't use divide by 0 as a...
Because it's a magic card now.
This is actually the name of a magic card, and people are like, what do you mean? Is he going to his side?
Do you get,
like, no!
Loot?
If you divide by 0, you can't do it. That's not a possibility in math. It makes an infinity going up. If you not go to school? They're like, oh, I think it costs you and 2. Like, it's a kind of like a remand. Die! Just die!
In any case, you can see where this is going. So are you just going to leave up G1 because if at any point you tap out, then I get to tide combo you to cut off all your G, and then the Tranquil Domain.
I deserve it.
Yeah. So it's very difficult from the Goblin side, but if you have like a good mix of tools, you can deal with a good mix of threats. But at the end of the day, Wasteland becomes the absolute most powerful threat or answer that you have access to. Because catching that Wasteland 2-for-1, like Replenish needs every single one of its lands. Like basic lands aren't good in Replenish because you need to lace together UU2 and WW2, and you've got a bunch of colorless lands in your deck. So those Wastelands are almost always like they're much more effective than just wastelanding somebody's Caves of Koilos or Llanowar Wastes or Mishra's Factory or whatever. Like they do double damage effectively. So But that's what makes everything. Honestly, I think if we're gonna talk about like really awesome decks to jam against each other in pre-modern, actually Replenish versus Goblins ends up being a really cool one because it's close. Tom and I split matches 2-2. Tom won most game ones, so I won 2-1 each time, but he won 2-0 each time he won. So for what it's worth, in like a best of 5 scenario, like Tom definitely has the edge, and then overall like game score wise, Tom has a 6-4 or a 6-4 edge. But I thought it was a really cool matchup, and unfortunately there's a lot of variance involved, but there's a lot of navigating involved. And
but
where we land
going first.
Yeah, where did we land? Where we landed was I just simply cannot risk running Replenish into Jared's Goblins. Jared being on the play, me with just 2 Swords of Plowshares. Like if I have 4 plows main, if those 2 Seal of Cleansings were just like plows instead, and I just like left those seals in the sideboard.
Oh my god, man.
I would look so much better, but
you don't.
But I don't. I don't have 4 plows, so I can't mold a plow to kind of set me up in a good spot.
So we were playing those matches last night, and Tom's just like, well, if I didn't have this card, you think I should mulligan? And I was like, but you have the card. So no.
What was the card?
Phyrexian Rager.
Oh my god. You should
I had
still
to keep a hand on
mulligan.
a Phyrexian Rager.
You still had to mulligan. To the listeners, this is I've won game 1 using Goblins. So transitioning to our PSS, Rich Shea also has access to the Goblins deck. Nobody on our team, except for a sole Lanny Huang, thinks that Rich Shea could ever pull out Goblins against Tom's lineup of the Rock, Blue White Dreadnought.
Can we pause for a second? Because my story is better than whatever you're going to say.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So Rich Shea's 3 decks are Goblins, Blue White 12-12. I think his Blue White 12-12 deck is worse than Tom's in the abstract, but it's very good in the Blue White 12-12 mirror, right? I think we're on agreement on that.
Correct.
And his 3rd deck is, of course, because he's Rich Shea, mono white, 5-color white. Parche, right? So Tom's 3 decks are Goblins. I'm sorry, not Goblins. The Rock, Lanny Rock, Blue White 12-12. Again, I think he has the better list, but it's worse in the heads up. And Landstill, right, which has like a lot of the recent innovations that have been built into Landstill by Landy Ho and others, right? So, and Brian Sullivan, etc. David Daniel. So I looked at these two deck lineups and I was just like, oh shoot, I've come to a conclusion about which deck Tom should play, right? But I didn't trust myself. So I called up Zvi Mashowitz, Pro Tour Hall of Famer, Zvi Mashowitz, who, if you know anything about Zvi's professional background, you would understand why I called Zvi Mashowitz. Side note, Zvi was the one who taught me to never play the rock, right? So these two things are things you should know. Zvi taught me to never play the rock, and then he also, he's taught statistics at Columbia, is one of the many jobs he's had that are highly quantitative. He's already gotten to the goal line before I finished describing the context. He says to me, "You know what the right answer is, right?" And I said, "Yes." He's like, "Do you want me to say it?" And I said, "Well, you don't have to say it. I understand." And he said, "I wouldn't say it, and that deck wouldn't be in my lineup. But given what and he's like, and he clarifies, he's like, Rich Jay's a very good player, but you know his deck lists, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, you have lists, right? We're not shooting in the dark." I'm like, not only do we have lists, but he doesn't have Winter Orb Armageddon in his 12-12 deck, right? So, and he's like, the answer is obvious about what deck to play. It wouldn't be on my lineup. But once you've got it, there is only one choice. By the way, Rich also knows this. It was the second thing that Zvi said.
Yep, that's true. Rich does know this. The only choice is the rock, and of course, here's something that I think nobody has apologized to me for, which I would like to ask for.
You need an apology?
I would like
How
to
about
get
for me.
I would like to get an apology, because the prior week on the PSS, I shuffle up. I've got my replenish deck. Pretty excited to play my replenish deck for an entire week. All of the buds are like, "Yep, Rich Shea, he's gonna pick Parfait against you. He can't pick any other deck. Parfait is a slam dunk.
Because we all thought
don't play your Grotog deck, Lanny. That deck sucks."
Wait, first of all, to be clear, it does suck. That is your blue-green. I talked to Lan about this, and he said it's not quite blue-green stasis, but it is effectively blue-green stasis.
And I shuffle up, and I'm like, I'm hyped. I'm going to play an easy matchup, replenish against Parfait. I've won so many times with this matchup. I play a Flooded Strand, pass the turn. What does Rich Shea do? He plays a Dark Waste and then Portent, targeting himself, taking a damage down to 19. And like, I just knew it. I knew. And he was like, "Oh, I knew you were going to play this deck." He was like, it was your only choice. And I was going to play from week one. I saw the schedule. I saw the decks. I'm like, I got to go 3 decks against Rich Shea. I am so excited to play Grotog into Goblins, Parfait, and Blue-White Dreadnought, because Grotog actually has a good blended win rate against these. And I felt like I was and I am the weaker player between Rich Shea and I. So I felt like I needed a slam dunk, like, walk of a match of Replenish against Parfait. And so I was shooting for the stars, picking Replenish. All the homies had my back. They're like, he's gonna pick Parfait. It could be the last time he ever cast land tax in a pre-modern tournament. And of course, Rich playing to win just embarrasses me with Dark Waste Portent. And nobody's like, "Oh, sorry, Lanny. I guess it turns out that Rich Shea, one of the greatest pre-modern players in the format,
also with a quantitative background."
Yeah, with a background is like MATLAB, like just I don't know, STEM dude. Like,
he has a PhD in numbers.
His emotions are gonna take over, and he's gonna play his pet deck. Of course, he's not gonna play his deck. But then, what do people say about him going into this week? Is like, "Oh, Rich Shea doesn't like his Goblins deck. I don't know if he's gonna pick Goblins against Tom." Why would he not pick Goblins against Tom if he's gonna win every single game one against Tom's lineup? Like, why? Why not?
I mean, it's not every sinsingle game. Tom has on the play advantage. So here's the thing. This is what Zvi thinks, right? Zvi thinks that Rich can't play Parfait. So the prospect of playing against Pernicious Deed every single game is too daunting, right? But I don't know. Rich Shea has many wins against the Rock with his Parche deck, just not against Tom Metelsky. So
okay, so
he doesn't think he can play it.
Let's break this down strategically. So we're gonna play from Rich's shoes. So broadly speaking, we know that Rich has an uphill battle because effectively all three of his decks are dogs to all three of Tom's decks. Like somehow, I don't know how this happened.
Except for the 12-12 mirror match.
I'll get to that. Somehow, Tom designed the Kryptonite lineup against Rich Shea's lineup. But there is one caveat. When you play a best of 5 matchup Magic, you have the potential to play more game ones than you do play post-sideboard games. So when you play best of 3, you'll never play more pre-sideboard games than post-sideboard games. At best, you'll play one of each, or you'll play
or twice as many.
Twice as many, right? But in a best of 5 matchup, you have the range is flipped. All of a sudden, you play at least twice as many game ones, the same amount, or only 1.5 times as many game twos. So run this 1,000 times, right? And you're going to play proportionally many more pre-sideboard games. So what that means for Rich is that all of a sudden, Parfait, not a very good deck against the Rock, but it is a very good deck against the Rock in game 1. You saw it when I played Parfait against Tom Metelsky's Rock in game 1. And effectively, all it takes is an Armageddon because Tom's form of resistance is a measly 1 or 2 Naturalize and 4 Pernicious Deed. This can be very easily circumvented with some number of Enlightened Tutors and Duresses. And of course, just jamming permanents. So all of a sudden, I would have Parfait as like probably a 35-40% win against the Rock. All of a sudden, Parfait kind of bumps up if it's a best of 5 because in game 1, Parfait has maybe like a 60% favor. So Parfait favored in game 1s against the Rock. It's unfavored in game 1s against Blue-White Dreadnought because Bentley made.
So at those ratios, Rich could be closing out the match in 3 games half the time. That's actually pretty substantial.
Yeah. Not 3. Not like you can't maximize it, right? So the most likely outcome of 2 game 1s between Parfait and the Rock is probably going to be 1-1.
That's like but it's like 36% or something.
Yeah. But if he gets the 2-0 and then he gets to play 3 matches post board, even if he's 30% post board, he can,
he's
land it, right?
He's closing it out a high percentage of the time.
Yeah.
Right. So
I agree. So he's a dog in game 1s against Blue-White Dreadnought with Parfait. It does not get much better post board because Blue-White Dreadnought's pretty resilient to Parfait. And then Parfait against Landstill is also an uphill battle. So that basically bans Parfait unless Rich has the soul read that Tom is going to pick the Rock, which we know Tom's going to pick the Rock, or that combined with him feeling that Goblins is not going to be a good pick for the reasons that we'll share. So let's go to Goblins. Goblins has
no. I think we should go to 12-12 first.
No. 12-12 is last because that's the deck that we think he's going to pick. So that's the deck everyone thinks he's going to pick. Based on
I think
emotions.
he's going to pick Goblins.
You think? Oh, I converted you because you did not think that to begin with.
Yeah, I thought about it more and more because Rich just doesn't have the. Okay, so just dial it back to Iron Man versus the Hulk era, right?
Yeah.
I was so excited to play Lanny Rock in the finals of this meetup against Lanny because you were playing 12-12 and I was just like, oh, I'm going to crush him, right? But what ended up happening was we split game 1 and game 2. You stole game 1. You stole game 1 by executing your deck's plan.
Yeah, I sold game 1 by playing Dreadnought and stifling
made a Dreadnought and attacked me with it twice and I got my removal spell countered. So I'm like, wow, you stole game 1. So I won game 2. It took a lot of work, as I recall, to win game 2.
Yep, and Utabi Orangutan got in there 10 times.
Yeah, and in game 3, I had hella removal, but I couldn't get through the Winter Orbs, right? And so the thing was, like, I had these decisions about Winter Orb or 12-12. Winter Orb or 12-12. And I was like, Utabi Orangutan against Winter Orb in this situation is really bad to Daze.
Yes.
And you had Daze, right? So here's the thing. if you didn't have that Winter Orb in play, I would have just raffle stomped you, right? Like, wouldn't have been close. But you did have the Winter Orb because that was your game plan. And your deck is all full of, sleight of hands and impulses and opts and everything to find those things. Gushes. Rich doesn't have Winter Orb. So if you go to like an unlimited game where Tom is just flashing back Call of the Herd and Factor Fiction and Crozen Tusker, like, Rich is literally just gonna be like, all right, well, here's a 2/2.
All right, well, let's talk about that when we talk about 12
that draws a card.
Because like, Rich does have one weapon that may be nearly as good as Winter Orb, which we'll get to. But I wanted to talk about deep analysis. I want to talk about Goblins game ones. So Goblins is the quintessential game one deck, and like we said, we're gonna play a lot more game ones in a best of 5, right? So, Goblins has great game one against the Rock. Without fear of engineered.
Do you think it's great going second?
It's great. It's just great. It's Goblin Ringleader. Like, so the Rock has these 4 duresses that do nothing, and then Goblins gets to either win the lottery with a lackey start or just play 8 Goblin Ringleaders in the form of 4 Matron, 4 Ringleader, the Rock just can't beat Ringleader. I mean, but
I played Jared Doucette at LobsterCon. In game 1, he was Goblins, I was the Rock. This is exactly the matchup we're talking about. I was playing Fran's physical copy of Lanny Rock. Jared was playing, I assume, the same 75 cards that he's got in front of him at the PSS. And Jared won game 1. I drew all 4 duress in game 1. That was a factor. And my God, if I could hit a Goblin Ringleader like Jared Doucette, I would never play any other deck. That guy hits 4 Goblins every time.
Yeah.
True or false?
Yep, true. Plot
every
armor.
time it's 4 Goblins.
Plot armor is serving the... He just starts with Goblin Recruiter as his companion, and it costs 0 mana. I lost game 1. Yeah,
I agree.
game ones are extremely favorable for Goblins into the Rock. Against Dreadnought is actually typically favored because Goblins is just going to be a lot colder to a turn 2 Dreadnought, and we know that.
I'm sorry, you're now talking about Goblins versus Dreadnought?
That's because Dreadnought is in Tom's lineup.
Oh, is in Tom's lineup.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So we've tested this at length. Goblins wins more matches, but fewer game ones. And Goblins into Landstill, I imagine it's also the case that Goblins is going to steal more game ones. Although
I could just anecdotally myself, as I've played Landstill in a lot of events, I have never lost this match. I don't know if I've ever won a game 1.
Yeah.
So I assume I've won a game 1 somewhere, but I don't remember it. And I've never lost the match, though. Right? Yeah. So if you're talking about game 1s being of magnified importance, that's not good for
Landstill. So this is why we land on Rich being sort of mathematically backed as Goblins being the top choice. However, it turns out that Rich Shea, in all of his ability, seems to struggle with making this Goblins deck function. And
he was 0 with Goblins in the round robin.
Right? And it appears that this discomfort could be so strong that despite the overwhelming, I believe it to be overwhelming, maybe it's not overwhelming, but I find it to be overwhelming, despite the overwhelming likelihood that Goblins is mathematically the best pick, it might not emotionally be the best pick. But like I said, Rich Shea is a mathematical
he's a robot.
Person. Yeah,
he will choose the mathematically best deck.
Look, we're talking about the new Spock that, has sex. He could be sex Spock in this scenario and be like, well, I'm not attracted to goblins. So I'm not gonna.
Have you ever seen the new printing of Goblin Ringleader? I wouldn't be attracted to goblins either.
I don't know. He's got guns. I could be convinced. He's got guns compared to old Ringleader. But in any case, we final deck in Rich's lineup: blue-white Stifle-Knot, the best deck in pre-modern, without a doubt.
Is it without a doubt?
Or is it just... now we start to think that Goblins is the best deck in pre-modern.
I think Goblins is good.
But after this week, we'll find out. But with Blue-White Stifle Nut, you have a triple header of probably bad matchups, with the exception of the mirror. So,
but that's a coin flip.
Yeah, it's closer to a coin flip. It's
a weighted coin flip, but it's a coin flip.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually very complicated. So we'll get to that last. To start with, Blue-White Stifle Nut, not very good against land still. It does have one thing, which is that if it can get a meddling mage on the table naming Swords of Plowshares, land still becomes very, very cold.
It's just clunky.
But
right. So I let me just raise something, which is the fact that Tom is on the play is kind of a big deal in this matchup, because he could just land standstill.
Yeah.
No, just play standstill. Like, so you just play standstill before Rich does anything. He basically loses the game on the spot. You can't just give 3 cards to Tom. He'll crush you. That's the problem, because Tom is going to stop playing lands after Rich is going to stop playing lands. You can't just leave him in a position where he has 3 more lands, because like a Mishra's Factory beats Rich's plan B, and 1,000 things beat his plan A. That's
well, in game 1, it's actually at least a little bit closer, because you're trying to, so like humility is checkmark against Rich, because he has no way to interact with it once it's on the table. So Tom is going to have that going for him. But barring humility, after that meddling mage is on the table, I think all that Tom can do is cast Wrath of God. I'm going to pull up this list just to be sure.
He can destroy dreadnoughts with his enchantment artifact removal.
Right, but he's going to be looking at a much lower density of that.
And he can counterspell them. Yeah, but a Mishra's Factory beats plan B. That's the problem. It's not like Rich can ever attack with that meddling mage.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that, like, if Tom is cut off of, like, when we tested the match, a meddling mage naming Swords of Plowshares is extremely awkward for Tom.
It's extremely relevant. Yeah, I agree.
So Tom left with basically his outs once that mage is in play, become Humility, Wrath of God for the mage, 1 copy of Humility, 2 copies of Wrath of God, and then of course to interact with Dreadnought, he has his full counterspell suite in addition to 2 disenchants. So it becomes a very difficult game to play, and we tested, and fundamentally it was just kind of like meddling mage on Plowshares makes a big difference. Moving on to how both players can sideboard this, Tom gains 3 copies of Annul, an additional Wrath of God should he want it, his own copies of Meddling Mage, which are going
those are 100% coming.
Yeah, which are going to make it very awkward to Rich, because Rich could potentially lock himself out of Swords to Plowsharing's Tom's Meddling Mage, and then he'll only have 2 Last Breath to rely on.
Or do you think he's going to bring Last Breath in this matchup?
Does he
have to?
If this became the matchup, he absolutely would have to, because his first Meddling Mage still has to name Plow. His second Meddling Mage will have to name Meddling Mage. So if Tom then answers with a Meddling Mage naming Dreadnought, then all of a sudden Rich can't play Dreadnoughts until he casts Last Breath, in which case he would need that Last Breath.
And then he just loses 100% of the time.
Exactly. So I might even So I might even play the first Meddling Mage naming Meddling Mage, given this play pattern.
It's really
you really don't want to lock yourself out of your own Plowshares.
But the bigger problem is that Tom's technology level can escape the brain freeze plan. That's really the big issue.
So we have the 1 Seal of Cleansing, the 1 Chain of Vapor, and the 1 Arcane Lab. So with this 1 copy of Arcane Lab, he just aces the game. However, Rich is a pretty sharp opponent. If Rich finds his 1 of 2 disenchant before Tom finds the 1 Arcane Lab, Rich can simply sandbag a disenchant and the mana to cast it until the turn that Tom casts Arcane Lab. So it's not a foolproof strategy, but it's just a very good one. Tom just has a large density. And what's really great about Landstill is that Landstill can be the beatdown against Blue-White Dreadnought. Blue-White Dreadnought, given unlimited time, can definitely get to a point where this brain freeze plan becomes very alive. But faced with, up to maybe 4 damage a turn between Mishra's Factories and Decree of Justice tokens, all of a sudden, it's possible that Tom can just straight up try to outrace.
Tom has a disenchant's not Seal Cleansing, right?
He has 2 disenchant main and 1 seal cleansing in the sideboard.
So just small note, if you're going to be a landstill aficionado, I think you should play seal. I still play seal of cleansing, no disenchant. I think you should play seal of cleansing, not disenchant. And the reason for that is in a sideboarded game, you could just play meddling mage on disenchant and pass so that you can cover your arcane lab. Because the problem is if you cast your arcane lab, that's your spell for the turn. They cast disenchant, you can't counterspell.
Yeah.
Right. So you just play meddling mage on disenchant, and then it just they have to stop the arcane lab from resolving now. If they don't, they just lose the game.
Yeah, that's definitely a tricky angle. Moving on to blue white Dreadnought versus the Rock. Dreadnought again likely going to be in kind of a good place in game ones, but we've played plenty of game ones when we tested.
That's a very goes either way.
Yeah, it can definitely go either way. My expectation would be a 1-1 split. And a 1-1 split, of course, favors the post-board deck because then the post-board deck just needs to win 2 out of the 3 post-board games.
Yeah, so Rich gains very little, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, deep analysis is good.
Yeah, so this would be a good time to talk about deep analysis. We were testing last night.
Oh my god.
Tom says to me, he's just like, I think I like my spot here. Like, it doesn't look that good for you. And I'm like, I don't know, Tom. And then I cast deep analysis.
Then I switched my screen to look at your side.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
where did all these cards come from?
But your hand was nothing. And then I switched to looking at your hand, and you had like 2 Vision Charms, 2 Dreadnoughts, and a Stifle. And I was just like, can't win.
Yeah.
Like, all bases are covered.
Yeah, we were in a pretty good position. So while we favor the Winter Orb Armageddon stuff out of the Dreadnought sideboard, Deep Analysis doing a pretty good Armageddon impression in that specific game. 4 cards is a lot of cards. So that said, we still like the Rock post board. Rock gains the additional 2 naturalizes, a Smother, and Edict.
Crumble.
And Crumble, just like the good stuff. Like,
so you think Rich would sideboard in a null, right?
Yeah, I think that Rich would just bring in 2 annul, 1 deep analysis. I think that Rich would sideboard out the 2 swords to plowshares because I also found them to be pretty anemic. They don't really cash in versus anything except for a Ravenous Baloth.
Treetop Village.
Yeah, a Ravenous Baloth, a Treetop Village. They're pretty bad against a Call the Herd token, and ultimately, because this match, the only way that Rich wins is on volume and pure power of overwhelming Tom. He can't really stand to have these cards that would at least at their best cycle, right? I plow the thing that you did for the turn, then I get my draw step. Now, we found a very interesting option for Tom in his sideboard strategy against Blue White Knot. What did we arrive at as a team?
I think he should side out Recurring Nightmare and all 4 deets. And the reason I think that is because if Rich is going to side in a null, then he can strand the annuls. And the other thing is that, in testing, and I don't know if Rich will do this, but you were naming Pernicious Deed with your first meddling mage almost every time. So if that's the thing, we can gain a ton of virtual card advantage by just not having Deed in our deck. And so what we are finding over and over again is that the games that the Rock is winning, it's because it can deploy a bunch of cheap cards, be they Vendetta, Crumble, Naturalize, and that the games that it's relying on cards like Pernicious Deed are the ones where it's getting stuck by days, right? So just not having it in your deck is an interesting option. If it messes up the first meddling mage and it messes up all these annuls that might be getting sided in.
Yeah, and I think that it's plausible that Rich might run out his first meddling mage naming a card like Naturalize, but it is
there's definitely 4 Naturalize after sideboard.
Exactly, but it is very, very dangerous for Tom to be able to resolve a discard spell, clear the way, and then put Pernicious Deed on the table. Because then Rich's range for protecting a Dreadnought becomes just Stifle.
He has to have triple combo, right? No, you can Vision.
Well, you can Vision Charm as well, but
Stifle's obviously better because
Stifle's a lot better because they'll get the attack. But I wanted to add one more thing, which is just that the optimal play pattern from the side of the Rock with a Pernicious Deed on the table is to simply sandbag a Cabal Therapy And once the blue-white dreadnought player goes for a dreadnought with a deed on the table, then you can just therapy away vision charm or stifle, whatever you think is the problem, and your deed is going to get away scot-free. And you'll also catch any meddling mages that are straggling on the board at the same time. So we still think, deed's still powerful in that scenario, but
well, there's a reason that he would be siding in a null. There's a reason that he would
exactly.
It is the most powerful card in the other deck.
But this specific sideboard juke, I think it's pretty fun. And in a best of 5, you can just board those deeds in and out. You can just be like, after you think that Rich is caught onto the plan, just bring the deeds back in. Like, Rich is never going to know. And but yeah, I think as a heuristic, it is very advantageous for you to name Pernicious Deed with Meddling Mage. But your range also for Meddling Mage names loosens up if you have access to a null, and you can always annul a Pernicious Deed.
2005 U.S. National Championship. It's the championship match. Antonino DeRosa is playing a blue Tron deck, I want to say, against a Rats deck in the top 8. And his opponent's got chittering rats or something, just discarding rats, right? So it's game 2, and he does some sort of duress, and he's just like, he didn't have the mana leak, right? And Ant's, I think, on the draw in game 2, and he's testing against your deck, mana leak just wasn't good, etc. Right, sides it out, and then so it's game 3 or what, I don't remember who wins that game, but then the next game his opponent taps out for chittering rats. He's going to set up Ink Eye's Servant of Oni or whatever. And Ant's like, gotcha. And he mana leaks the chittering rats. Untaps and lands, whatever sweet blue creature that he was in. Maybe he was playing the 0 cast that costs 2/4. I think he was the Tron deck. There are a ton of good blue decks.
Yeah. So Tom getting to play mind games around those meddling mages is going to be good. Post sideboard, we love the Rock against Blue-White Dreadnought. We
love the Rock in all 3 matchups post sideboard, right? The problem is in a best of 5, you might be back against
the wall against likely against Goblins, and then reasonably likely against Parche. So all that said, that's our analysis. We think that Rich Shea brings Goblins, and we think that Jared Doucette brings Goblins. And we also think that given all of this, given how often Goblins wins game 1s, the little green men or little red men, depending on your perspective, might actually just be the best deck in pre-modern.
So I thought that I was going to be testing one of the decks I might potentially play at the 1.5 at the meetup this week. And it turns out I did. Man, Goblins is really sweet. And so F. Palouche made a sweet Goblins deck, right? Tom used it to... What was the name of the tournament? I didn't realize you guys were playing a tournament finals?
Yeah.
And I was just making fun... me and Fran were watching and making fun of you guys.
Yeah, we had our... no outside assistance, so I had my headset muted, but you and Fran can of course talk to each other in the chat while birding my game. But for the listeners, the Magic Online scene is crazy. We're playing nonstop all the time. So every month we play a league, and then every 2 weeks we play a league that runs over the course of 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, the best performing people over the past 4 weeks play a playoff, and then every 6 playoffs or whatever, we play a championship. So this was a playoff, 16-person bracket of the highest performing players from the last 4 weeks. Tom and I met each other in the finals. I was playing my PSS replenish list, plus 1 mana short in the sideboard, because mana short is actually amazing.
Who had mana short in the sideboard of their replenish deck? I want to say a year ago.
You didn't have 2 copies. I don't know what to tell you. 2 copies.
No, because I had to make room for Thawing Glaciers.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. Effectively a reverse mana short. You tap all your lands. We probably need to get the 4th Exalted Angel in there. It's so good. I've one more game with it. I was saying,
yeah, that's a good idea to have that card. If you have that card, you got to play 4. I think that was one of the big weaknesses I had in my red-white deck last year. Was I just only had 2 in my sideboard. This is the best card every time I had it in my deck.
Yeah, hell of a card, Exalted Angel. So Tom was playing Fran's Goblins. So wait, I mean, I don't know, Mike. I'm sitting here. I'm still loving Michael Hoyp. He's just like, I don't need green sources. I need ancient tombs. And he just goes. He plays this. He just plays the 4 carps, the 4 wooded foothills, the 1 forest. That's 9 sources. And then where you have City of Brass, Mossfire Valley.
Mossfire Valley has been good. Love it.
And maybe an extra wasteland. Michael Hoyp has opted for 3 copies of Ancient Tombs. What does 3 copies of Ancient Tomb get you? It gets you 4 copies of Siege Gang
Commander.
So,
what if I just played like mono red, take out all the green, and just played like all the Rishodon Ports, Wastelands, and Ancient Tombs? How about that? And I'm in the main deck. I'm giving up 2 naturalizers.
Even then, you couldn't swing it, right? Because you're talking about 12 colorless lands. But yeah, no. I mean, that's a deck. Like it's definitely a deck, and the answer that you have versus Oath of Druids is Click Slither, Goblin Pyromancer.
Yeah, but I don't think people are going to play Oath. Well, I mean, we know people are going to play Oath, actually. Okay, so here's the thing that's crazy to me. I was looking at the top performing decks for this month. That mono green Thermokarst deck is like the 3rd best deck this month. It won a bunch of like 40+ person events. That thing does not look playable to me. Like, just stone not playable.
So I don't think it won a 40+ person event, but it certainly has been putting up numbers online. Big shout out, honestly, to the homie TV Tyrant, a regular of the Magic Online series. He's been playing this mono green Oath deck for a very long time. He's always been experimenting with different concoctions. This is the one that kind of stuck and succeeded the most. Notable other prison players like Ricky Thorson and Pablo Marcos have also picked it up and given it a spin. A combination of
2 explorations, a mulch, right? Like, none of these numbers make
let's not talk about the bad cards in the deck, and let's talk about the good.
That's just not bad. It's just like, it seems weird.
So the internal synergy of the deck is the combination of the cards Sphere of Resistance and Thermokarst and like whatever, combined with an Oath Terravore package to race the creature decks, and against non-creature decks, you can simply cast your Terravores. But yeah, you just prison them out. You got Wasteland, you got Stone Rains, you've got Stone Rain effects rather. You've got Sphere of Resistance. You can with ports, you can reliably put your opponent in a position where they can't cast any spells, and your Treetop Villages and Mishra's Factories can win the day.
So, but serious question: this deck is a substantial dog to just anybody who has like a Gaia's Blessing and a Swords to Plowshares, right? Like, that's not a crazy.
No, it's not. It's
statement
not,
to me.
It's not. So. One thing is that against more controlling decks, then it can execute its Mishra's Factory Treetop Village plan. So you have access to all the man lands to give yourself additional threats when you need them.
Okay.
So it's an impressive deck in that it's good at accomplishing like exactly, it's one monocolored decks in pre-modern, as we know. You're going to get advantage by having access to really great utility lands and mana consistency. And yeah, the combination of Sphere of Resistance and Thermokarst Winter's Grasp and Rishodon Port can't be understated. It can stop a lot of opposing decks from getting things going. I think the only thing that I dislike about it is the inherently card disadvantageous Mox Diamonds, can you believe it, and Explorations, which put this deck kind of in a weird place, because the way that I see things going, you just you benefit from hitting every single land drop, and you want to hit more and more lands, right? Because you're casting Sphere of Resistance, you're casting, you're activating Rishodon Port. So if you sure, turn 1 Sphere of Resistance is great, but if you're sinking that land into Mox Diamond and you're not playing that land, that little bit of value could be used to just tap your Rishodon Port and get more activations in.
So this deck has got 29 lands, 4 Mox Diamond, 2 Exploration. That's a lot of land, bro.
Yeah, that's 6. Mox Diamond and Exploration do effectively the same thing. So
why don't I just cut Mox Diamond and play more Exploration?
I'm down to play more exploration if you play more wild growth and mulch. I don't love
I feel like I should just play wild growth and how many wild growth are in this deck?
It depends on the pilot, but I would play.
Some of them have none.
I would play every wild growth before any copies of Mox Diamond.
So like first turn wild growth, second turn thermokarst, right? Is the
that would be the idea.
But this deck just how does it not have 4 mulch? If you're gonna play like Tranquil, I think I would play 4 Tranquil Thicket. But if you're like Tranquil Thicket, Rishon Port, Factory Wasteland, this is like a great mulch deck, and it can't be right to not have any Guy's Blessing package anywhere.
No, you
that can't be right.
Well, no, Guy's Blessing is just going to shuffle all your lands back for your Terravor. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, but who cares about Terravor? What if instead of Windswept Teeth, I played Wooded Foothills, and then I played like Shard Phoenix and Crater Hellion in my sideboard? Right, like this deck has no defense. Like I can't see it beating Elves, for example. Right, you're leaning very hard on Sphere of Resistance for the Elves matchup.
You might be onto something here. Honestly, I'm inclined to agree that Shard Phoenix is going to be a lot more oppressive than Terravor against creature decks. And if you're playing against control decks to play 4 Factory, 4 Treetop Village, then you're going to be in a pretty good spot against control decks anyways. All things ignored. And then Guy's Blessing just gives you, puts you in a decent spot to begin with.
I mean, and then because this deck just plays Windswept Heath for no reason other than to grow Terravor, right? We could give it a reason by playing Mountain, and then I could play Red Blasts, which like this deck seems like it's loose against decks that Red Blast is good against, and it seems like you would not mind having a plan B of summoning a Shard Phoenix or 2.
Yeah, I mean Shard Phoenix is a great threat against control decks,
so like. I mean, nobody's.
I mean, great threat in that it doesn't get Source of Plowshares.
So yeah, but like, I mean, incumbent in that is that you're going to be playing some guy, like at least 2 Guy's Blessings, but like a lot of these sideboard cards just are not impressing anybody, right?
Yeah, mono green doesn't have access to a particularly exciting sideboard.
I mean, it's like Black Vice is cool. Why don't you play the 4th one? I mean, I guess Curse Totem plus Sphere of Resistance is hell on earth for Elves. Like between those 2 cards, maybe. But I mean, I hate Sphere of Resistance in so far that like I'm a Mox Diamond deck, right? Like this seems super awkward for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think once you start splashing colors, Moxes all of a sudden look better again, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, so I own a set of Sphere of Resistance. I've only ever played them in one tournament. It was a 9-round PTQ in April of 1999. I won that PTQ, then came home back to Ohio and wrote the article "Who's the Beatdown." So maybe I should dust off the old Sphere of Resistances. That's a thing.
Yeah, not a bad plan. I mean, I'm definitely on board. I would love to cast Sphere of Resistance off Ancient Tomb, but maybe that's too much to ask. Ancient Tomb does not quite gas up the 1GG Thermokarst.
So I did put 4 Terravors in my shopping cart last night. Promo code Flores.
Nice.
Just
all like 50 cents, I'm sure.
So some of these cards are like crazy expensive, and I'm like, I'm not buying that.
You can get some old border Sylvans now, old border English Sylvans, thanks to.
I own a lot of FBB Sylvans, but they're in Ohio.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, all the Sylvans I have in New York are white bordered.
But
I have like a lot of them. They're expensive too. That's weird. White bordered Sylvans.
Yeah, people love playing Sylvan Library and Commander. It's actually like a big hot topic. You've got 40 life, so you can cash in that Sylvan all day.
So here's a stupid question. Why would I not like sideboard a 3rd Sylvan Library and like 4 Abundances? Like if I just cast Abundance, don't I win the game in this deck?
That's a super pertinent question. I don't know.
I mean,
it's hard to cast Abundance under a Sphere Resistance.
Yeah, I'm not playing. Some of these cards stink. I mean, like, actually,
Sphere Resistance is one of the only good cards in this deck. Like, yeah, but you play 8 Stone Rains because you have Sphere Resistance.
Okay, so this deck's game plan against 12/12 is to land a Sphere of Resistance, then hope they don't just beat you at some point.
That's correct.
This is a serious question.
Well, conceivably, you can oath out a 13/13 Terravor, and then you're also good.
Yeah, they have Swords of Plowshares.
Well, then you gain 13 life, and you oath out a 20/20 Terravor.
Okay, so that's my game plan.
Yeah.
Resolve Oath, cross fingers. That's my...
Well, it's really good against Meddling Mage.
Oath.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless the meddling mage is naming Oath of Druids.
All right. So
But Sphere of Resistance also helps.
What if I'm -4 Mox Diamond, +2 Exploration, +3 Mulch, and then I cut something else I don't like?
I think 20 minutes into this conversation about mono green would be a good time to talk about what cards are in this list that you're looking at.
Oh, okay. I've been getting after you for this, and so I'm guilty of this. So I'm looking at a version on TC decks right now, played by Thursday is God.
Ricky Thorson out of Madison, Wisconsin. Shout out Ricky Thorson.
And it's he finished 7th out of 51 players. And this deck list has 4 Terravore. Terravore, for those who don't know, is a type of Lurgoyf. So it's a 1 GG for an XX trample. Terravore's power and toughness are each equal to the number of land cards in all graveyards. So if, for example, you put a land in the graveyard via, I don't know, a Stone Rain of some sort, that would grow a Terravore. Or if you put a bunch of lands in the graveyard because you oathed one out without Gaia's Blessing in your deck, that would also grow a Terravore. Okay? This deck has defense in the form of a single Naturalize and a single Moment's Peace. However, to be fair, the Moment's Peace, you're going to have access to it because to be in the graveyard, you can flash it back, right? There is 1 Mulch in this deck. I think I would want to play more Mulch, as I said. I put 20 Mulches in my cart last night. They were 35 cents. So I bought out all the Mulches.
I might actually have to hit you up for playstyle Mulches then.
So I bought all of them. 4 Thermokarsts, 4 Winter's Grasp. I assume I own these cards, but my God, it will have been pushing 30 years since I've thought about playing one, right? 2 Exploration, which is good for the pocketbook. Exploration is an expensive card. I don't know how many I own. I assume I own 4. I'm not sure. Again, it's been a while since I've been called upon to play an Exploration. 2 Sylvan Libraries. I know I have a bunch of those handy. 4 Oath of Druids. I have those in a sleeve already. 4 Mox Diamond. I have proxies for this. No comment. I literally threw cards at my screen just now. 4 Sphere of Resistance. I own that. And then the lands I own. 1 Dust Bowl. 2 Tranquil Thicket. I think I would play 4 Tranquil Thicket. 4 Mistress Factory. 4 Rishon Port. 4 Treetop Village. 4 Wasteland. 4 Windswept Teeth that have no text other than to grow a Terravore. And 6 Forests. In the side, this sideboard could be improved, I think. 3 Black Vice, 3 Cursed Totem, 3 Naturalize, 3 Zurin Orb. There's a classic. There's no way to exploit the Zurin Orb in this deck. It's not like in. It's not
a land tax deck. No.
Yeah, so it's just you just like put a down payment of a card down for the future value of a healing salve.
I mean, it's important versus burn. What can you say?
I'm skeptical if this is going to save you, but sure. 1 Choke. Choke seems like a great card in this deck, actually. 1 Compost also seems like I mean, if people played black decks, maybe it's good against the Rock.
Questionable.
When they pop their deed right before blowing up all your permanents, you'll draw a card. 1 Crozen Reclamation. That's a classic. So this deck, I can imagine it being optimized to be good, but I think it leaves something to be optimized at this point.
Yeah, it's impressed me with what it's capable of. It's pretty soft to combo decks. I have Devour comboed out this deck. I have Replenish comboed out this deck, and of course, in the olden days, I have Parfait out this deck.
Yeah. This deck has got to be like a giant joke to Parfait.
Yeah, it's
like never win.
It's
right?
pretty.
There's 1 Naturalize.
It takes a while, but Parfait never loses.
It
takes a long time though. It takes a really long time. I cast a Chroma Angel of Wrath for 11 mana through Sphere of Resistance to win the match. So
yeah, but I just can't imagine them ever. Also, this deck is really bad to Tormod's Crypt, really bad to Sword of Plowshares, and really bad to Gaia's Blessing. So, 3 extremely widely trafficked cards.
Well,
one of them puts
thankfully,
a hole
Parfait is gone. Long live Terravore Oath. Yeah, I mean, noted.
Goblins, this is a great matchup for Goblins to side in their Tormod's Crypt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, It's a great matchup for Goblins, period. I think if you check out Francisco's latest video, you can probably see an example of that. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure he alluded to that happening. Yeah, but Goblins is just the best deck in the format. You can't expect to win them all, right? You just can't.
So are we resolved on Goblins is the best? Are we optimizing Goblins for 1.5? Because I have 2 weeks to practice.
I mean, I personally would rather play like a bad deck than Goblins, but you and Tom are like.
Okay, would you rather have a bad deck than win $1,000?
I don't think we're top prizing 1,000. I forgot what the split was, but it's not 1,000.
It's going to be me, you, and Tom in the top 4, and then I guess what do? Well, whoever's responsible for taking out the other guy in the top 4, and then we just split the money.
Oh no, we're not doing that. We're definitely not doing that.
If you see me and Tom in the top 4, you're going to play for blood.
Oh hell's to the yeah.
Are you going to rescind that when I win the roll against you?
No, because there's no roll in the top 8, Mike. It's determined by seeding.
Oh, you're in the top 4. We're sitting across the table. Winner of our match is going to play the winner of Tom Metelsky and whoever is the bad luck of being paired against Tom Metelsky. And I'm higher seed than you. You still don't want to split? Goblin's Mirror?
No, man.
You have no direct answers.
I'm going to open on Flooded Strand, Mox Diamond, Quirion Dryad. Go.
You're dead.
Oh, I know.
Let me introduce you to my buddy Gem Palm Incinerator. This is how we'll end this one, right? So me and Lan and a bunch of other friends are at John Finkel's house this week, right? And so we were talking about Taylor Swift. And John, it took me 2 days to figure out how stupid and dumb and wrong John was. Because John's never wrong, right? So he's just like, so you're telling me the same person is the best songwriter on earth of all time. I said, I never said of all time. I said of the generation, right? So best, okay, fine. The best songwriter of the generation, but also the best marketer and also the best touring musician, right? All those do you really think it's possible for somebody to be the best songwriter and the best marketer, right? And somebody else isn't just running this and the best touring musician? And I was just like, mathematically, this doesn't make sense. So yesterday I texted John and I said, of all the people I know, I would have taken this criticism for everybody else. You're the stupidest fucking, whatever. Do you think it's very possible for someone to be the best Magic player, the best sports gambler, the best blackjack player, all in one person? Because I know someone who is the best Magic, uncontrovertibly the best blackjack player of all time, and the best sports gambler of all time. So, this is kind of weird. He runs a hedge fund. You might want to invest with it, right?
Well, the Taylor Swift team is awaiting John's application. I mean, I don't know. Taylor Swift herself is not like a marketer, right? But she understands. I mean, I don't know. What's your give me your thesis on why she's the best marketer? She's definitely the best product.
Even if she didn't figure everything out herself. I mean, think about I was I'm an S tier marketer, right? I used to be I would say I was an S tier copywriter and S tier media buyer, and I think I was probably still if I actually still bought media, I'd probably be an S tier media buyer. So I haven't bought media myself in a long time, but I ended up being a great leader of marketers as a result of my ability to teach other people how to do the things that I did at a very high level. So I think that even if she's not the best marketer herself, she assembled this sort of machine of human beings and brand kind of overlapping.
Yeah. I mean, she's clearly
resulted in this thing.
She's clearly one of the most hands-on musicians when it comes to managing her brand that you see out of anyone. She's just a lot more connected with what she's doing. It's not there's somebody who's clearly behind the scenes. I mean, there's obviously thousands of people behind the scenes, but she seems to have her hands in everything. I mean, she's directing, one of my favorite, coming from my field. So Joseph Kahn is a widely respected cult director, was directing all the Taylor Swift music videos up until Taylor Swift started directing them herself. And I actually thought that's kind of neat because you could actually just see that Joseph Kahn, she was working with this guy for, all of the all of the music videos from the 1989 era, the crazy ones, the Bad Blood ones, Wildest Dreams, notably Blank Space, one of my favorite music videos. Those are all directed by Joseph Kahn.
The weird thing, Blank Space is one of the greatest music videos of all time, and I wish it did not exist, but I'll tell you why afterwards.
Okay, so So Joseph Kahn has just like this complete, like it's funny. It's like funny to mash up with Taylor Swift, who's just like, we know that she's not vanilla, but she is, kind of like this outwardly vanilla like pop icon, and he's always just putting her in the most over the top music video stuff. And then she just brought that same kind of humor and absurdity to the music videos that she started directing. So I guess I buy it. I mean, Taylor Swift is just the best, right?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Do you know what break, blow, burn is?
No.
It's a fragment of a line from John Donne, right? And a few years ago, it's pushing 20 years at this point, I think, Camille Paglia, the feminist intellectual, wrote a book called Break, Blow, Burn, and it was just 12 close readings of poems, including this John Donne poem. And it was a surprise smash hit, right? Like, not a hit amongst, like, here's a college professor writing close readings of poems, they're in a journal or whatever. It, like, literally was a bestseller. So I've always, like, super admired that. And, like, I personally had this aspiration. I'm like, I would love to write a piece of analytics that was, like, approachable by people, and it was about things that they kind of liked, but it was still intellectual. And so the album 1989 came out, and I listened to it and I studied it, and especially, like, Shake It Off is the pop song equivalent of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, right? Like, I think just people just don't get what a masterwork Shake It Off is, right? And I'm like, all right, this is my chance. I'm gonna write a close reading of all the songs from 1989, and Blank Space in particular is this incredible piece of poetry, right? And then the stupid music video comes out. And when the music video came out, it's so iconic. There is no other possible interpretation of Blank Space except for Taylor Swift in lingerie bashing a convertible to death with a golf club, right? Like once you've seen that, there's no, it doesn't matter how well reasoned it is, right? That's the reading of Blank Space. So it ruined. I had this dream for like 20 years of writing kind of a pop intellectual, poetry close, which is what I did in college. And she ruined it by making a music video that was too good. so damn you, Taylor.
And Joseph Kahn.
So this is what I would say about Taylor Swift. An argument I made back to John was she was already the greatest songwriter of her generation, like more than 10 years ago. So the third Taylor Swift song I'd ever listened to was Back to December, and I had no opinion of her. The only song I had ever heard was Love Story, and the only thing I knew about her was the Kanye West sort of fracas. That's all I knew. So I assumed she was just, there's beautiful blonde pop stars that come out every year. And I'm just like, she's just an interchangeable, beautiful blonde pop star, or whatever. I don't even know I see them in the gym. Their music videos are playing all the time. She's just one of those, right? So I heard this Rolling Stone reviewer say she was the greatest songwriter of her generation, blah, blah, blah. So I decided to download some of her music. I listened to it, and Back to December is literally the best sad song of all time. And I was just like, well, she is, in fact, the greatest songwriter of all time, and she already was. What people don't know is how good of a songwriter she is. Rihanna's biggest hit is just a Taylor Swift cast-off, right? So Taylor Swift wrote this song. She's like, so she played it for her then boyfriend Calvin Harris in the car, and she's like, I wrote this song. What do you think? And he's like, this song is too good for you to do. And like that if you do this song, people are just going to craft a narrative on this, right? So she gave it to Rihanna, and it became Rihanna's biggest hit. So
you have to tell the listeners what song it was, Mike.
I think that the listeners can look it up on Google. It's widely Googleable, but it is Rihanna's biggest hit by like a factor of 100. And it's a very good song. And if you go on YouTube, you can listen to Taylor singing it from a leaked recording, and you can listen to Rihanna singing it, and you can tell me which one you think is better. But that is a factual story. Calvin Harris, the famous DJ who was then her boyfriend, said the song was too good for her to do. which is a crazy thing to say to someone who is currently performing in the Eras Tour.
Yeah.
that the idea that there is a song that is too good for her to perform is Looney Tunes.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think the next time that I brew up like my masterpiece deck, and it starts with 4 Mox Diamond, 4 Ancient Tomb, I'm gonna like look at it and be like, Mike, I can't play this. People won't like.
They're gonna say that you just dated Mox Diamond and Ancient Tomb.
Exactly.
But this is your revenge song.
Yeah, exactly. That's all they're gonna say. Mike, I need you. I need you to Calvin Harris this one for me and find me a vessel to deliver my message to the world. Who would be the ideal candidate? Probably just Flint.
Sam Black.
No, it can't be Sam because Sam's also too. Sam is too. All of Sam's work comes with like a caveat of Sam's bias, but I think it would be Flint. I think if I came with the truly like my Sistine Chapel, like the best deck that I ever brewed, I would give it to Flint to play. Flint and no one else.
So the song is "This Is What You Came For," and the opening line of the Wikipedia entry is, "This Is What You Came For" is a song by Scottish DJ Calvin Harris featuring Barbadian singer Rihanna. So, LOL. Somebody got paid for that one. Oh, yeah. Lanny. Yeah, you should give it to Flint. I tell you what, why don't I hand it to Flint? Give me the list. We'll give the list right before LobsterCon so Flint has time to practice it.
And no leaks this time.
Four Ancient Tomb and 4 Mox Diamond, you say, but you can't play this. It's too good for you.
I can't play it. It's too good.
How hilarious is that? This is what you came for. Is this song by Scottish DJ Calvin Harris featuring Barbadian singer?
Yeah, they can't keep getting away with it. The Calvin Harris is the world. I mean, we haven't even started on Ed Sheeran, but I guess we'll have to save that one for another
Taylor
podcast.
Swift literally wrote the song. How insane!
All right,
be like, here's my Calvin Harris song. You stole my hit and gave it to another girl.
Such is life, right?
Taylor probably got paid for that song.
I think she's doing okay. All things considered. She had a few more in the bag. She had a few more arrows in the quiver, Mike.
I mean, that song was like 2016. So how many she puts out 4 albums a year? She is a machine.
Yeah, I mean the folklore Evermore Midnight's run is pretty unbelievable.
And then she's been just like. But the thing is that the Taylor's versions that she drops in between are all full albums. It's like, oh, she just re-released. I'm like, except for she released 12 new songs on every one of them and made 4 music videos. Yep. Like every one of the Taylor's versions is a new album. It's literally insane. How does she have time to do that?
That's all she does.
And record and tour and fall off of an elliptical machine while listening to Drake. Like, she has time for all those things. But she doesn't have time for love, Lanny.
She doesn't. I mean, you can't blame her. You can't blame her. Like what are you gonna do? You just gotta let. She's married to the hustle. That's just how.
I mean, if my significant other gave away my best song to another pop star, I might not have time for the love either.
Yeah.
Love Mike.
Loves my colony.
Game over.